Yes, here we go. It is the Denver Sports Podcast brought to you by Breckenridge Brewery, the official beer of DNVR. Got the Avalanche Amber Ale to celebrate the Stanley Cup champion Colorado Avalanche. Use that Breck Beer locator and go find a location nearest you that is selling all that delicious Breckenridge Brewery, or get down to the bar once we reopen here very shortly with the DNVR Bar 2.0. You know we'll have all their beers on tap. I am your host for today, Jesse Montano, joined by my good friend AJ Haefele from the DNVR Avalanche and the man himself, Andre Simone, Mr. DNVR. And then we will have Yahir, our boy Yaya, normally behind the scenes. He'll be jumping in and out today. He's a busy man around DNVR today. What is it? August 5th. We got the golf tourney going on. So Yahir's kind of one man in a lot of what you're seeing what you will be seeing behind the scenes today from all of us here at DNVR. But he will be popping in and out because it's going to be a fun show. We had some fun yesterday on the DNVR Avalanche pod, off-season pod. Ran out of things to talk about a little bit, so we just kind of started airing out everything that was bothering us, hockey-related or otherwise. And then when we were putting together this show, we were all kind of bouncing some ideas around, and there's been a lot to celebrate for Denver sports fans recently.
So true.
Like I said, we're 6 weeks removed from a Stanley Cup champion for the Avs. You had a back-to-back NBA MVP in Nikola Jokic on the Denver Nuggets. Russell Wilson comes to the Denver Broncos in the offseason. Finally, after half a decade of wondering what the F is going on at quarterback, you get a franchise quarterback. Coors Field's still beautiful. But there's been
Gorgeous.
a lot. There's been a lot to celebrate. There's been a lot to be happy about. But we are in a little bit slower time of the season. So we're going to – I don't want to say negative. We're not going to take the negative approach today.
Us? Never.
Never. I would never even think about being negative on the air. But look, like there are still some lumps, some bumps and bruises with the franchises here in Colorado. But then also at the end of the show, we're just going to air it all out. I've been a Friends guy my whole life, but I was recently shown, and by recently I mean this morning, the full Festivus clip from Seinfeld. And I was laughing my ass off. So we're gonna do some airing out of the grievances, but that's coming later. I want to talk a little bit about what is the biggest issue facing each of the Denver teams right now, Colorado teams, I guess. Because even though things have been going well, things are nowhere near perfect for any of the teams, even the Avalanche, who have their own issues here and there. So that's what we're going to kind of start talking about. We're going to go to the Avs and Nuggets. Like I said, we're going to get Yahir on here to talk to us some Rapids. We'll talk about the Broncos, the Rockies, and just kind of see how everyone's feeling. What's everyone seeing as the biggest issues? Where do each team need to make some fixes to make sure everyone's having the fun and enjoyable summer that the Avalanche players are having here soon. Yeah. Let's start with the Avs because honestly, while they do have issues, they're spending the summer with the cup. Like their issues are minimal.
Yeah, I mean, whatever you complain about with the Avs at this point is complaining about something that hasn't happened yet.
Right.
Because they just won the Stanley Cup and, they've got question marks going into next season. I think that your biggest concern with them at the NHL level on the ice is the bet that they made in goal. And they've made so many good decisions that everybody's kind of just like, okay, it's fine.
Yeah.
But like, I was after the Jonathan Huberdeau massive extension last night, I was talking with some peeps in our Discord about the gamble that it was, and they were like, oh, Calgary, they're not going to get anywhere. They're, taking this huge risk. And I was like, could we keep in mind here, like, the defending Stanley Cup champions turned over the keys to their goaltending position to a guy who was a sub 900 backup last year?
Yeah.
and has never been a bona fide starter in his career. Like, can we keep this in mind here that the team coming off of the Stanley Cup is in the midst of making a huge gamble at such an important position, and we've all just like accepted, like, hey, this is how they've decided to go. It's a big risk. We trust that they're going to make the right decision and it will go well, because over the last 5 years, most things have gone Colorado's way.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to roster decisions like that.
Right.
When it comes to player evaluation and taking advantage of guys and acquiring players that they feel can play bigger roles for the Avs. So like we just accept that this massive gamble has been made already. But if we get to the middle of January and it has not gone okay, and Pavel Francouz can, does not take a step into the starter to keep things afloat, like, you could be talking about one of the bigger missteps with the championship core that we've seen in certainly recent Denver sports history. So, like, they've got to get this right. Otherwise, you're like, because this is a tandem that they've committed multiple years to.
Yeah.
It's not like they go ahead.
When's the last time a defending Cup champ has taken this kind of a roll of the dice between the pipes?
I like maybe when Chicago turned over the net mining position to Corey Crawford after Antiniemi. Because Crawford just was not a proven guy at that point. He'd been a good AHL starter, but was not like, he was never like, Corey Crawford was never like a top prospector, and he ended up having quite a good career. But it was, it really is, it really is a big, but most of the teams that get to the Stanley Cup Finals do so behind something good happening at that position. So this is a pretty big gamble from the Avs. And it's like, we don't talk about it much because there isn't a lot to say. It's a gamble. And then, will it work? Will it not?
Well, and
that's all there is to it. We just don't know.
Yeah.
Even stepping back or taking it one step further back. And again, obviously, you don't look at it as a problem because it worked out. Darcy Kemper took him to a cup. Everything's great. But like, this has actually been a little bit of like an ongoing thing with the Avs. We kind of tend to brush it off a bit because of the success they've had in the last few years, and then obviously the last couple months even more so. But I mean, I really don't know. Peter Budaj, is that the only goaltender the Avs have ever developed into some semblance of a starter? I mean, like, again, you feel good about it, and it's easy to forgive it because you win a cup, but like, it's kind of been gamble after gamble after gamble. I mean, shit, for the last, decade now? Varley was a 50-50 guy that they were hoping could take the next step. He did. He was good here. Grubauer, a 50-50 guy they were hoping could take the next step.
Varley was a little bit different.
Yeah.
That was a guy who was a 22-year-old starter on a playoff team who didn't want to re-sign with his team. Like, Varley's situation was the one where you're like if Jake Ottinger right now just was like, I'm not playing for the Stars again. F those guys. Like, that's the kind of situation the Varley's was.
That'd be amazing.
It was a freak situation that the Avs were like, yes, please. And like, that's a deal that I would still make 100 times out of 100.
Oh, I'm not saying I wouldn't. And again, like, you look back at this last decade, a lot of those gambles have paid off. Almost all of them. Varley, Grubauer, Kemper, and now you're looking at Georgiev. But if they're
really all of them did. Like, they brought in, they took the chance on Frankie, who was a KHL guy. He was like 27, 28 years old. He comes over from the KHL, has a great year in the AHL, and then has been a solid backup when he's been healthy. Outside of the one lost year, Pavel Francouz has been a gamble that's paid off for them. So this is why they took that leap, and we all just kind of went, okay, well, we'll see how it goes. Right. Because they're scouting, and they have not badly missed at that position in a long time. And so you're just
in the
like,
pro
okay.
personnel department, at least, right?
That's what I mean.
All these are
NHL level, like trying to find quality goaltending. Like the Avs have had fine goaltending for many years.
Right. But Jesse's initial point of, draft and development hasn't really been there. It's been the Caps drafting and developing, and they give up a first rounder. And here you go. And it's hilarious to me that now this year we went reverse. Darcy is now in net for the Caps. And we let Samsonov and Vanek go other places.
I hadn't even thought about that. That's hilarious.
Oh, it's the endless Caps.
Oh yeah, they got it back big time. They were like, okay. Except they were just like, here's money instead of trading stuff to the Avs.
Right. It's the Hakuna Matata of goaltenders. I have a 4-year-old, so lots of Disney Plus blasted in my home. But
never apologize about Hakuna Matata.
It's the circle of life.
Brian Elliott and Andrew Raycroft weren't really gambles. Those weren't.
But so that is, if you are looking at the on ice products for the Avs, you do want, especially in that goaltending position, you'd like to see a little bit more development, someone come from within the ranks, because while it's worked out and it's great, don't want to keep hemorrhaging picks, especially with a core that, we talked about on yesterday's Avs show, we think has a nice little window here. You've got a nice window where you can bank a couple championships. So some steadiness back there and kind of stopping of the shuffle button in net would be nice.
And that's kind of the point of Georgiev, who, at his age, the 26 years old. If he hits, the Avs have him signed for 3 years, and then he'll be 29, 30, and then you can feel comfortable giving that guy an extension if things go really well for you. And if they don't, then you just continue to do this. You just continue to find that backup that another team has sitting behind a great starter, where you're just like, we love that guy, we think we can make it work, and you just keep doing this. You just keep doing this.
Right.
It's the cost efficient approach to the position. It's high risk, but if you get it right, you're rewarded because you have a cheap starter, and the money that you allot to the rest of your roster is meaningful.
And if he sticks, I'll really have to learn how to spell Georgiev consistently.
And Alexander.
Yeah, with an A at the end, right?
Yeah.
Wow,
the AR gets me all the time.
Let's talk about their ball arena roommates, the Denver Nuggets. It's been a really, going back to the bubble, I don't know if there's been a bigger roller coaster in Denver than the Nuggets.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, an awesome run in the bubble. I thought the bubbles were super awesome. I don't know why people hate them so much. I thought they were really fun. Great run in the bubble for the Nuggets. You have another good year the following, and then this last year just with injuries and is he coming back? He's shooting around before the game. It looks like he's good to go. No, he's not even dressed. Just a really weird kind of season. They make the playoffs, but nobody ever really felt good about it. Jokic wins back-to-back MVPs. It's just been really, really up and down. Tim Connolly goes to the Minnesota Timberwolves now in the offseason. Dre, I'll start with you on this one. When you take a step back and look at the Nuggets and everything that's going on, what is one thing that sticks out to you where it's just like you have to get that under control before you can go on to the next thing?
I think I might go hindsight is 2020, and it's something Brendan Vogt talks about all the time. At least when I see him around the office and stuff, is maybe the biggest concern with the Nuggets were these last 2 years their window. I mean, look at how weak, for NBA standards, the last two champions have been. And was this a team where, had the stars aligned, had they got a good run of health, had they gotten lucky,
Yeah.
they really might have just been the best team in the NBA and primed. And, you know, I mean, there's a massive albatross out there in Kevin Durant.
Yeah.
Who can absolutely just in this offseason completely swing the NBA championship.
Yep.
And we've seen this in the NBA. There are stretches where it's wide open. I think in the post-Jordan era, I can remember 4 to 5 seasons that qualify as such. And so we're talking since 99. That's a pretty big window, about 23, 24 years, where you've had 4 or 5 seasons where it was like, yeah, it's kind of up for grabs.
Yeah.
The rest of the time, it's kind of like, okay, let's wait for the Spurs window to close. Let's wait for the Kobe Shaq window to close. Let's wait for, the Warriors with KD's window to close, because there's not even really a point in trying.
Mm-hmm.
That's what can be a little annoying and stressful about the NBA is it's just 5 guys, and sometimes teams are just so loaded that they have that completely locked down.
What was it? 3 years in a row? It was LeBron versus the Warriors in the final.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
LeBron was on a couple different teams in that stretch, but
yeah, the Heat with LeBron, Wade, and Bosh, of course, had the league on lock for a minute. So yeah, this is a very rare time in the NBA's cycle, the last quarter century, to where there's actually kind of a wide open championship window, and the next couple weeks, months will determine if that's still the case this season or if that's kind of just shut. And you worry that the Nuggets smartly going all in and obviously have a few more restrictions than bigger markets like the Lakers or what have you, where you're going to have more wiggle room and trade availability, free agent signings and what have you. The Nuggets kind of forced to re-sign their guys, give a max to MPJ. Like, there aren't going to be equitable alternatives on the market for you to go another route. So you're forced into the route you've chosen. So that would be my biggest concern, because you can talk about Tim Connolly leaving and how that's frustrating. That conversation feels more similar to the Avs losing a goaltender and it being like, well, their track record has shown that they actually are pretty darn good at finding GMs and churning them out, and that the structure's in place where Calvin Booth was already the GM and can come up and like kind of keep the thing rolling, right?
The Nuggets are responsible for 3 of the GMs outside of Denver, right? Because the Minnesota, Chicago, and Toronto are all guys that made their bones in Denver.
Yes, sir.
And now and then
the goat. Like
you also have Denver's GM. So you're talking about 4 of the 30 teams in the NBA are run by Nuggets guys.
Yep.
So you can easily make the argument, hey, they know what they're doing there. There's a reason that they drew the line in the sand that they drew with Connolly.
True that.
But it doesn't, I would say it doesn't feel any better to me anyway.
No, it does not.
Well, honestly,
there's no solace in that. I'm not like, well, look at all these guys. For me, I'm just like, look at all the talent that left. You can't keep guys.
Yeah, and I mean, especially in a championship window, seeing guys leave kind of stinks. Yeah. Because they're saying like, yeah, sure, a ring would be awesome as kind of a reward at the end of the tunnel of this journey, but I'll actually take potential billions of dollars instead. So thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, when we talk about it that way, it feels a little like kind of, Rockies-ish, over the years, where you build up these great players just to see them, with maybe only one exception in Todd Helton. Right as you build them up, they go somewhere else. Yeah. Dre, honestly, hearing you talk about that, like, I feel way worse about the Nuggets now, because like I hadn't really thought about that these last 2 years in the NBA, like, it's been a rarity to see the league kind of up in the open. The NBA really lost me in the 2010s there for a little bit because of exactly what you're talking about. It's like for in game one of the season, you can make a pretty safe prediction for who's going to be there at the end of the year. Hasn't felt like that the last 2 years. Nikola Jokic is 27 years old. Back-to-back MVP seasons. You worry that you wasted it.
For sure, man. And I mean, we know how this is. Like, I don't know that the Nuggets have ever quite been in this position, but Avs fans, Broncos fans, we understand that pressure of you have an all-time great.
Yeah.
And man, the pressure to maximize that. I'm not going to cuss. I'm not on the MVR bets, but that effing window right here, right now, and just the hurt that it would cause us to not see, Peyton Manning, and we could list off so many other greats in Denver sports history, not win that chip at the end of their career, Elway, and so on and so forth, would be devastating, man. It would be devastating to see Yoke because we know his greatness. I mean, when they lost the 2010s, they lose Masai. I mean, I literally had to stop watching NBA basketball for a couple of years because the hurt was so great. To have this man who saved basketball for me and not see him get to the promised land, I don't even want to go there, man. I don't even want to think of what that would be like because that would be an all-time Denver sports regret.
Well, and the one for me, in regards to that, I remember when Jokic won his first MVP, I remember thinking it was so cool because that was a big deal for the Denver Nuggets. That a player for the Denver Nuggets won the NBA MVP. I know that the Nuggets have had some great players in their history going back, a little bit, but like, I don't know if the Nuggets have ever had anyone of this caliber where, I mean,
no, they haven't.
He's the best player on the court in 99% of games. And, you really just felt like maybe the NBA was starting to change the way they looked at Denver. Dre, you just mentioned like teams like LA, like the Lakers, they have that free agent draw. Denver's been referred to in multiple sports, maybe every league except for the NFL is kind of a flyover state, right? And it just really felt like that first Jokic MVP, like that put him on the map, coming off the bubble that saw them go to the conference final. You were like, here we go. This is going to be now 5 years of the Avs and Nuggets just banking trophies. And it just seems like it's come off the rails ever so slightly for the Nuggets, and you'd hate to see that continue.
It's right there, man. It's right there. Shouts to Brendan Vogt for always reminding me of this. That guy knows his stuff.
I'm actually obscenely excited for this Nuggets season,
dude. I mean, and we've been on standby for a year and a half. Like
that's the thing is
we had that week with Aaron Gordon and everyone healthy, and it was like, oh my god, this is happening.
Yeah.
It's like the Office gif, right? And then snatched from us like that.
Well, and because like the Aaron Gordon thing was such a monumental shift for the franchise, where they went from like, we like our guys, we're gonna keep building, and they were like,
we don't skip steps.
They were like, F this, we're putting our foot to the floor. Let's roll. Let's go play some basketball here. And then it got taken away from them. And then we spent all of last year just being like, cool.
Right. Is it 2023 yet?
This is nice. What's Jamal up to?
Yeah.
Because you just knew. No, there was no level of Nikola Jokic greatness that was going to be able to make up for the loss of Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr.
Yeah,
you just knew there was no level that he could get to that was going to be enough. That
was his Jordan season, like scoring 69 against the Celtics on what would have been a 20-win team, Bulls team, if he's not on it, right? It's his Kobe like scoring 60 in 3 quarters against the Mavs for a 500 team. Like you can only do so much, no matter how great.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there's no way he wins MVP ever again. The NBA won't let that happen. The NBA suffers from the worst kind of voter fatigue. And there's always the big shiny that is on the horizon. And right now that it's Luka. So it's like he's next.
Mm-hmm.
And the NBA operates in that way, and it's cool. I don't give a shit about the MVP ever again. If I never hear about the MVP ever again in my life, I will be thrilled. I never thought I would be so over a Denver athlete winning an MVP. The fact that I don't even want to ever think about it again because I was so sick of it by the end of it. And I have a hockey curated Twitter timeline, and I was still sick of it. So I just anyway, I'm very excited for this year. I think their starting five kicks so much ass, and
Yep.
I think their bench is gonna be.
I do too.
It's gonna be fun. Like
Mm-hmm.
you can't have Bones Highland involved in something and not be fun.
Yes.
And then obviously I'm very 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 biased about the excitement over Christian Brown, and like just getting to see my KU guy do a thing for the Nuggets. KU guys with the Nuggets historically has not been great. So I'm hoping this is finally one that goes well. But I'm very excited for this season. I actually on my drive up to Winnipeg recently, I was like, I wish I could just sit down and watch a Nuggets game. Like I was just ready because last year did not feel like I watched any.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't the Nuggets. It was this like flawed version of it. I imagine Clippers fans feel the exact same way. Where they're just like, yeah, we didn't even get to watch the team that got built last year because it didn't matter. So I'm amped for it, but I am nervous that hey, you now have major injuries to two of your three core guys, and if anything ever happens to Jokic, like you could be looking at the goldenest of golden eras in Nuggets history and look at it and say it never got a chance.
Well, if you think the Nuggets do have a chance next year, you'd like to put some money on them, head on over to our great friends over there at DraftKings. Get in on the hottest sports action for your shot at cold hard cash with DraftKings Sportsbook. Bet on all your favorite sports teams all summer long and gear up for football season, which is just around the corner. Very, very close. Right now, new customers can get a risk-free bet up to $1,000. Just make your first bet up to $1,000. And if it doesn't hit, you'll get another shot at a big win. Plus, with same-game parlays, spreads, money lines, over-unders, and props, your betting options really do feel endless. Best of all, DraftKings is safe, secure, and reliable. Deposit, withdraw your cash whenever you want. That's my favorite part. It is super easy to get your money out of there. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Use the code DNVR and make your first deposit to get that risk-free bet up to $1,000. Again, it's code DNVR. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Must be 21 or older. Colorado only. New customers only. Minimum $5 deposit. Risk-free bet paid out in the form of a non-withdrawable free bet token. Max $1,000. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. And, of course, if you have a gambling problem in Colorado, call 1-800-522-4700. I mentioned it at the very beginning that the Avs and the Nuggets might have the same biggest problem, and that is right now their altitude TV issue. But you don't have to worry about that with Evoca TV. They're the new GOAT in Colorado sports. It's just undisputed fact. They deliver amped up sports coverage for Colorado fans, exactly like what we try to bring you guys. And that's right, Evoca does have altitude sports. Above all else, I'm going to say a bunch of other great things about Evoca just now, or right now. They got altitude. Problem solved. Like, that's all you need to hear. They got altitude. Get the most regional sports for less. They got altitude, AT&T Sportsnet. You can get NFL Network. It's the lowest price for sports in Colorado, all in crystal clear HD, using less bandwidth than your current provider. Over 60 entertainment channels, news, movies, and more. Evoca is only $25 a month plus a $5 receiver fee. And right now, Colorado sports fans can get $10 off per month for your first 3 months. Go to evoca.tv/Colorado10. evoca.tv/Colorado10. You're going to get $10 off per month for your first 3 months. turn your home into the ultimate game viewing zone. You can even stream your teams from a phone, laptop, tablet when you're on the go. You can also add on Sling, the ESPN, and plenty more. And again, you'll get that discounted rate when you are bundling with Strings. No contracts, no catches. Ibaka TV is made for champions, just like the Colorado Avalanche. So head on over there, and you don't have to worry about the biggest problem facing the Avs and Nuggets. The Denver Sports Podcast, not the DNVR Avalanche, brought to you by Breckenridge Brewery, Jesse, Andre, AJ, and I think we'll be hearing from Yahir in just a moment. So those are Avs and Nuggets. You got to dig a little deep on the Avs. The Nuggets definitely have some concerns that are you wasting some of this. But let's get into the other, three kind of major teams here in Colorado. We'll end on the Rockies because I'm 100% positive everyone has something to say about them. But Yahir, if you're around, if you want to jump on, we can start with the Rapids or we can jump into Broncos. If, like I said, he's pulling like triple, quadruple duty today.
Oh, shit.
It's just chaos around Yaya's house. Yahir, around the DNVR offices recently, I have heard I haven't heard you guys glowing about the Rapids recently.
It's just
the eye rub, the immediate eye rub.
It just feels like every time this team is going to get it together, they don't. And it feels like every time they're going to make a commitment to the team, they don't. We had a Porrick Smith go on MLS.com. He had an interview talking about, he's the GM, by the way, for the Rapids, went on and just talked about how they're going to be extremely active this transfer window. They were going to try to get some players in here, make a real playoff push, try to push for that 7th seed. And this month comes by and they get a loan for a 31-year-old Chilean player for only 3 months, and nothing else comes by. And there's clear hold on the team, and nothing else happened. And now we're sitting here scratching our heads to what happened to the active window. And it just sucks because this team has talent. This team has potential after being the number 1 seed last year. And now you're sitting here fighting for the 7th seed with an opportunity to make your team better without having to give up any assets, because that's not how soccer works. You can just give up money, which they have to do. They have money to give up, and they don't do anything, and it just hurts. You can do it, and you just don't. And now you're just sitting here not believing the front office or believing if this team is really punting on the 22 season or if they just really believe their guys.
This team, man. This team. They were so bright and looked so good last year. And I don't know where the youth movement is either. The problem with the MLS is teams can kind of be constructed not too dissimilar to a college team where, there's going to be turnover pretty
often.
Yeah, pretty often. I mean, it's a lower level league in the greater scope of the world game. So there's going to be turnover. And so that was to be expected, and it just has felt like whether it's an insertion of talent through the transfer window or through the youth academy that had really been so important in the growth of this team to become the number 1 seed last year, it's just not quite there. And then, the bigger kick to the nuts, for lack of a better term, is that you see other teams around the MLS really doing some intriguing stuff, really kind of making some moves that make people raise their eyebrows on the world stage. And the Rapids are still, doing their thing where they're finding, it's the island of misfit toys, right? So we're finding guys on the margins and hoping they can have kind of a career renaissance in Colorado, which to their credit has worked out more often than not the last couple of years. But that can be a bit of a, tricky game you play.
Yeah, and Porrick, how you said, Porrick has done a great job of bringing in players. Like Colin Acosta was one of them. He was exiled from FC Dallas, comes to Denver, completely reignites his career, and now he's gone. There's the turnover you're talking about. He was one of your central midfielders, and he's no longer here. And you lose some of the young kids that you brought up through your academy, and Sam Bynes and Cole Bassett, and you bring in players like Max Alves and Lucas Festivus from Brazil to kind of be a 1-for-1 replacement, and they just haven't worked out so far. Lucas Estevez has been a little bit better. He's been a little bit more consistent than Max, and he's been able to fill in that role. But it's still not the same production that you need. At a certain point, you are going to have to invest in this team. You are going to have to give up money, GAM, whatever it takes to bring in players that can help you win now and not keep planning for the future. Because they do have a lot of young players like Priso, Max. They also have Yaya, Yappy. They have Lucas Estevez, Gustavo Vaicia. They have these players that they brought in, but they're not win-now moves on a win-now roster. They're future moves for a roster that could probably be good in a year or two. And that's where you get like peeved because they're telling you we're in a win now window. We're making moves to win now. We're going to be active. And then when it comes time to do all that, you don't get any of that. And it just becomes so frustrating as a fan because it's something that you see every transfer window, whether it be the summer or the winter one. And these players that they do bring in are just young project players that aren't working out so far.
So where's the disconnect here? Because the way that we're talking, I don't know if missed opportunity is the right way to put it. But again, like you go back a year, they're the number one seed in the West. Was that overachieving? And you're sitting there saying, cool, now you have something you can build on, and we just kind of missed? Or has there been some like mismanagement of assets here that have caused you to kind of go in the other direction?
I think it's a little bit of everything. I think last year was the perfect scenario. If everything went right for you, that's what you get. You get the number one seed. This year, you've actually had to like face a little bit more injuries, face teams in better form, and you've noticed that the Rapids haven't been able to get to the place that they were last year. It's also been the assets they lost haven't been replaced as they should. I said Cole Bassett and Sam Mines were huge parts of this team last year, and they haven't been replaced like they should. And now you're sitting here wondering, was this team really as good as it was last year? Or is this just the complete opposite and everything went wrong compared to last year that everything went right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they honestly feel like the Islanders, man. And you think of like that window a couple years ago, and it's hey, I know the relatable examples to make, and it's like, well, Devontae's was a day 2 pick. We can just replenish with other day 2 picks, and it's like, no, that doesn't work out. Like you were really lucky to get a stud from a day 2 pick.
Yeah.
You can't just think that's going to happen forever. You kind of got to maximize those windows. And I mean, resource wise, they're just behind the 8 ball. And thus, much like the Islanders, it's harder to keep up with the Joneses on a year-to-year basis. And it's more going to be, okay, let's try to rebuild for down the line. And,
You're constantly looking ahead.
Yeah. And then that becomes harder because you're not going to establish more revenue and more of a stable fan base if you're just good every 3 years, every 5 years.
Do you think you could kind of boil it down with the Rapids to they don't have a vision? They don't have a roadmap for where they want to end up? Or is that maybe a little too dramatic?
I think they have a roadmap, but they didn't expect the roadmap. They didn't expect the actual trip to have so many bumps.
Yeah.
That's what I think it is.
This road looks totally different than it did on Google Maps. Yeah.
I think they saw I-7. They planned out their trip to the airport with the 2008 map. And now when they head to the airport this year, like it's completely different. And they're facing all these bumps and like things on the road that you're like, I just didn't know this was here.
Yeah.
I think that's what it's more than anything.
Google does that anytime I go up to a Wyoming Pro Day in the summer to get a little draft coverage.
Yeah.
The routes seem free and clear, and then it would take me off-roading for 10 miles, and it was like, am I going to survive this stretch? Because you never know when Google's just like, all right, you're on your own, buddy. Ask someone with a cowboy hat riding a horse how to get to the university, to the University of Wyoming from here. So
somebody in a cowboy hat. Maps on my phone, whenever I'm going out to like do media at the Avs little like airport hangar, if you don't know where you're going, it takes you like as if you're going to the airport, and then it has a turn built in for like this emergency pull off. It's like, keep going, speed limit 65, turn now. You missed it. It's like, that wasn't a turn. But yeah, so same, but you know, man, it's just kind of tying this all together for the Rapids. Like, we've seen that with the Avs over the last decade. I think we are just kind of coming out of it with the Broncos, where it's like, you need to make sure that, yeah, you know where you're going. You've got a roadmap. That roadmap is up to date, and you stick to it and you follow it. Again, we saw the Avs have to restart exactly what you're just saying, Dre. It's you're rebuilding for the next rebuild, just over and over and over again. They did it for over a decade, because every time it looked like they were starting to go down a path, they're like, well, what if we try to take this shortcut? And it just ends up setting you back a year, 2 years when you keep making that same choice, that same decision, kind of like what, you know, it sounds like the Rapids have gone through now for the last year. It's you end up with situations like this where you thought you were in one place and were taking steps, and now suddenly you get punched in the mouth a little bit, and you start questioning, are we the team we thought we were 8-9 months ago?
Yeah. Great way to end it. Honestly, that's exactly what it feels like most of the time.
You know, so I just mentioned the Broncos, maybe kind of coming out of that. Dre, how are you feeling? Russell Wilson's in town. There seems to be real reason for optimism, and not just kind of like the preseason, well, maybe we can talk ourselves into it. Like, you feel excited for the Broncos to get going this year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's been a long while since we felt like this. I was actually doing a podcast with a homie who I used to podcast with 10 years ago. And it was crazy being like, oh, yeah, you and I have podcasted when the Broncos were actually good. That's how long it's been. I can't really say that about many of you who I've worked with. Like AJ, I think we've been podcasting for legit 7 years.
Yeah.
So like that says something that AJ and I have never been able to talk about a competitive Broncos team on a podcast. That's kind of nutty. So yeah, there's definitely optimism when framed that way. I'd say the biggest concern is, you know, as you too, the Broncos, much like we talked about with the Avs, have had to hemorrhage assets to get Russell Wilson, right?
Yeah.
And to try to kind of maximize this window and go all in on actually being a contender. I think the biggest concern, you know, the Tim Patrick injury certainly worries you, and I think the right tackle spot has me very concerned. And that's, again, much like the quarterback, that's a spot we haven't been able to talk about glowingly for 7 years as well.
I remember those draft pods.
Right.
It's the same conversation.
Always. And I'm not going to bring up the rest of the line or the questions at left tackle or wide receiver or Randy Gregory, who got a big contract and might not be healthy and like has only proven to be a legit starter at the NFL level for like a year. But that right tackle spot does concern me in an offense that's going to have to be run heavy. And that's the strong side where you're going to run primarily. And, you know, Russell Wilson is a smaller quarterback. And
is he?
Yeah.
I've never heard that.
Don't know if you'd heard that. And all that means is the margins are smaller, right? So when a bigger quarterback like Big Ben or Josh Allen might have a broken tackle in him every play, Russ isn't necessarily going to have that. And Russ is also going to have to be a little healthier and closer to 100% in his lower half, because how he makes up for that lack of size is with his mobility. And we've seen that with Russ. Russ is almost every year, the first quarter of the NFL season, Russell Wilson's a top 2 or 3 MVP candidate. That always seems to fade in the second half of the season. And, you know, I'm not going to bother you with all the stuff that went down in Seattle, but when you don't have a reliable right tackle and you worry about him taking more hits and getting more banged up, I worry those margins will shrink on you, and he's not going to be able to maximize his talent come that second half of the season if the right tackle is a turnstile and he's getting hit constantly, or making, rush decisions because he's constantly getting pressured from that side. Yeah. So that to me would be the biggest concern.
AJ?
Yeah, I think that it's kind of a combination of the fact that you need obviously you need Wilson to be healthy, but you need Bradley Chubb to be healthy. You need Randy Gregory to be healthy. You need to get healthy years out of Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy and KJ Hamler, because Tim Patrick is already gone. And losing Patrick sucks. He's the world's most likable guy. The easy story to root for, and a guy that had really made good. But that was also like the one position that they could suffer an injury at and be like, okay, we can handle this.
Yeah.
You hate to see it. Obviously, you're not like, oh wow, sucks for Tim Patrick, but it'll be fine. Like they're worse today because he got hurt. But it's really like key guys that are going to their success and failure will be a driving force between the team's results this year are all guys that you have serious injury questions about. And I mean, Russell Wilson's not really one of them, just given his history.
Yeah.
He's been an Iron Man in his career, but you do, as you get older, when you do suffer one injury, it leads to a second injury, which leads to a third, and that's kind of how it starts, right? So, and what you're talking about with the offensive line questions, and can they protect him, and the guy's in his mid 30s, his knees are going to start getting creaky. That elusiveness is going to slip some. I'm hopeful that a more reliable running game will help him.
Yes.
I'm hopeful that they are able to work around some of the things in his game, and find a way to make life a little easier for him. But really, my big concern is that the defense just does not live up to the reputation, because it's got plenty of talent. But if Bradley Chubb and Randy Gregory can't stay healthy, you're gonna struggle.
Yeah.
Now you need Nick Benito to be a star for you.
Yeah.
And you for me, I think last year's defense was a touch overrated, and I worry that without Vic there to cover some of it up, and without the fact that last year's team got a little on the lucky side in some of those 50-50 coin flip aspects of the game, that they get leaned on a little too much. Now you hope there's better balance between offense and defense, where the defense doesn't need to be exceptional to keep them in games.
Yes.
It's not confrontational in the locker room.
Well, yeah, it's so you can have a 16th place defense and still be competitive. But really, like, if you're trying to pick what's the biggest problem for the Broncos, it's not a Broncos problem. It's the fact that they're in the world's toughest division. They have an absolute murderer's row in their own division that they have to try and claw their way through. And as the team with the new coach and the new quarterback, they're starting fresh, and they don't have years of consistency and years of things built up the same way that the others are going to do. Now, McDaniels is obviously new out in Oakland, but and we all hate that dude, but we also all know if that guy figures it out and gets it clicking, the guy's a genius, and that only makes the Raiders that much more of a problem. So I've got concerns all over the roster and question marks and how good are they actually, blah, blah, blah. But my number one thing, the AFC West is nasty. And they have a tough. I think they have the NFC South, right, as their matchup this year.
Yeah, I mean the NFC West actually. So
oh, it's the West. Okay, so great.
Yeah.
So I've got two questions that kind of fold into both of what you guys were just saying. One is about Jerry Jeudy, and obviously, this last year I didn't have a ton of time to dig into the numbers. So maybe tell me if I'm like just way off base on this. It's really struggles to catch the ball.
Yeah.
And I mean, tell me if I'm off base statistically. Really struggles to catch the ball. And where I'm going with that is when you step back and you look at this Broncos roster, there's a lot of, I guess, talent potential is the right way to put that. You have a lot of these younger guys that you're looking at like, holy smokes, they're just talent at every position. There's skill at every position. But they're all young guys, and you're hoping that they all take that next step. Again, equating it back to the stuff that I deal with every day, the Avs. We watched that for a decade. Just so much promise. Oh, this guy. Oh, that guy. And when they just don't take that next step, maybe the way that you're projecting or that you're hoping, it kind of derails things. So I guess my first question is, one, how much concern is there about some of these younger guys being able to take that next step? And two, there is a bit of pressure on this Broncos team this year, bringing in Russell Wilson. Do you think that will weigh on any of these younger guys who are maybe being thrust into maybe bigger roles than they were last year, purely just because of the quarterback that you have?
I mean, they're kind of cashing in their chips, right? They're saying like, hey, you guys like our growth potential? Let's see if it's actual legit once we put it in a championship context and, like see if they'll float or sink. But it really is one of those where you're going all in and you're hoping that it works out the way it did last time the Broncos went all in on a Hall of Fame quarterback, where Demaryius Thomas and Eric Decker, that was just growth potential. Those dudes hadn't really shown anything at the NFL level aside from glimpses, and Elway was able to sell Manning on that, and it panned out in the best of ways. But yeah, no, we haven't seen it in an actual like winning setting where it's all on the line and the pressure's on. Yeah. And it's a key moment for the franchise, no doubt.
Yeah. No, for sure. AJ, anything to add on that?
I'm not worried about the young. If the young guys can't handle it, they won't be in the NFL very long. And I'm just not that concerned about it. I will say I absolutely love Pat Surtain and Javonte Williams. And I think that they have the potential to be all-time great Broncos at their respective positions.
Well said.
If each of those guys lives up to that, if Jerry Jeudy lives up to that, if Courtney Sutton lives up to who he could be, like they could be a lot of fun, man. Like there's potential for the team to be a really, really, really fun team to watch every week. And that's nice to have. But I will say, I definitely don't worry about additional pressure on the younger guys, because that's just sports. You've got to be able to figure that out. I mean, you have to look, if Nick Benito gets thrust into an every down role because Gregory and Chubb and Reed, like those guys can't handle, they get hurt or whatever. Okay. Welcome to the league.
Yeah.
That's probably bad for everybody involved, but ultimately, like, those guys are, your best players have to be your best players. They're relying on all those guys taking steps forward, which is one reason why you should bet against them, because that's unrealistic. Some of these guys aren't going to do that. Right. The Broncos can love their tight end room all they want, but Eric Tomlinson isn't going to catch 60 passes this year. It's just not going to happen. So it's hard to, when a team's plan is for, hey, look, when everything goes well, we'll be really good. Like, it's tough for me. I don't think it's a particularly deep football team. So
that's the concern.
Too many things where it's like, this guy gets hurt, this guy gets hurt, this guy gets hurt. You're just kind of like, well, now you're pulling street free agents out of here to patch holes here, and you're putting Band-Aids on a bullet wound at that spot. Right. So,
and in the NFL, the last 10 years since we've moved away from two-a-days and padded practices, and I mean, I don't know what the correlation is necessarily. I've just noticed this trend. There are injuries no matter what. That's not an if anymore. It's a when
Yeah.
and how are you going to be able to adjust?
It's when and it's how many.
Yes.
Because like, you know, there have been times where you see like, oh, the cornerback position. Some teams it's like there's like 7 dudes who get hurt, and you're like, what the fuck is this, man? Like you can't even like. There's no team in the world that can cover this up.
Yep.
Right.
So some of it, so you have to get a little bit lucky in
Yes.
that regard.
Yeah.
Basically, don't
Be
be the
lucky to be good.
Chargers.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So we're running a little long here, so we'll take do our last little read here, then we'll do Rockies and
Air our grievances with Rockies.
Yeah.
Go.
I don't know. Have you guys heard? I don't know if it's heard that it's smooth sack summer. I hadn't heard that. Had you guys heard that? The look on AJ's face tells me that he had heard. I'm sure you were behind this. When you're playing in the summer sun, make sure you're scaped. Jesus Christ. From the pubes to the bum. Make sure. Again, it's smooth sack summer, so you're gonna have to be. That's right. This is the summer to keep your balls cool while still looking hot with Manscaped. It's like 300 degrees outside right now, so very well timed. The leader in below the belt grooming is making sure we all have a ball this summer by giving our pants partners everything they need to stay fresh. Dive headfirst into smooth sack summer by going to manscaped.com for 20% off plus free shipping with our new code DNVR. The Manscaped Performance Package 4.0 has everything you need to prepare for that summer bod. Inside this package, you'll find their Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, Weed Whacker ear and nose, hair trimmer, crop preserver, ball deodorant, crop reviver, toner, performance boxer briefs, and a travel bag to hold all of those goodies. The Lawnmower 4.0 trimmers features a cutting-edge ceramic blade to reduce grooming accidents thanks to their advanced skin-safe technology. Lawnmower 4.0 has a 7,000 RPM motor and a new multifunction on-off switch, can engage a travel lock, and gives you the ability to turn the 4,000K? Why am I blanking on their LED spotlight on and off when you need a more precise shave? Did I mention it's waterproof? Beach, lake, or shower, this razor will devour even the
a bunch of dudes shaving their balls on the beach, baby.
On the beach, jump in the water, rinse it all off. Who needs a shower when you're on the beach with your boys? Get 20% off and free shipping with the code DNVR at manscaped.com. 20% off and free shipping with the code DNVR at manscaped.com. It's smooth sack summer, boys. Get on board or get left behind. I don't want to get left behind, so I don't really have many options, I guess.
No. Fair. The
Denver
choice is
Sports.
one.
Yeah. I guess I got to go to Manscaped. Denver Sports Podcast, Jesse, Andre, AJ, brought to you guys by Breckenridge Brewery today. Use that Breck Beer locator and find a dealer nearest you, or come on down and see us at the DNVR Bar 2.0 when we get it back rocking and rolling here in just a matter of weeks. They are the official beer of DNVR. All right, the moment we've all been waiting for. We actually could probably do a full show on just Rockies grievances.
We could.
AJ, you did some wonderful pinch hitting on the writing side for our DNVR Rockies folks this week. Our boy Patrick was supposed to be on with us, but he is stuck in San Diego trying to get back home after the Rock series with the Padres. So you are once again going to be pinch hitting for the Rockies to kick us off here, AJ. I mean, the look on your face has already just got me primed for what's about to come here.
I mean, honestly, I'm more exhausted thinking about the Rockies' existence than any other aspect of my life.
Wow.
I've had brutal, heartbreaking breakups that caused me less emotional turmoil than Rockies fandom.
That you talk about less in therapy than the Rockies.
It doesn't linger this long.
Right.
With
Yeah.
the breakup, you're able to get over it eventually.
Do you either bang it out or you drink it out or you do whatever you got to do in order to move on, and then you grow up, you mature, you wish the person well, or you don't,
Right.
and you get on with your life. But with the Rockies, it's like you try and break up with them, dude, and they text you at 6:40 p.m. every day, you up, and
Just to
you're
remind you
just
they
like,
broke up with you.
no, leave me alone, no. I honestly, I just can't. I there are so many organizational, like, foundational issues here. Um, if they were a house for sale, it would be a teardown. They would be up for sale for 80K. It would
Yes.
be a teardown. It would not be something that you walk in and say, "Oh, this is redeemable." No, fuck all that. You're ripping it all apart and you're rebuilding it from the studs, because it's an organization that, from the owner to the GM to the way they do business to their development process to their talent evaluation to absolutely everything that they do, there isn't a positive that you can draw. Um, uh, if you try to be, look, Coors Field is a great experience.
Yeah,
The
it's
fact
beautiful.
that Coors Field is great and the McGregor Square is really cool and a great addition to downtown, dope. They've made the experience of the Rockies game day awesome. Outside of when you're caring about the result of the game, because their bullshit bullpen blew another fucking lead, and you're just sitting there like, great, now they're 13 games under 500 and they're 36 games back of the Dodgers. This is the best fandom ever. I It's the combination of the fact that they're in a division with a legitimate all-time great juggernaut in the Dodgers right now, who are a well-oiled machine uh, of excellence. And all they've got the resources and the personnel. They use their resources at an elite clip, and everybody that they draft, you go, great, now that guy's going to be an all-star, or he's going to be involved in a trade package for an already all-star.
Mhm.
It just doesn't, like, there's a helplessness to the Rockies fandom right now, and you don't. There's no reasons for optimism. Zach Veen looks like an absolute superstar in minor league baseball right now, and what does it matter? So he's going to come up and he'll be a great player for the Rockies. They'll give him a $200 million contract and convince him to stick around, and he'll either do that, age poorly, and end up old and broken down and expensive like Charlie Blackmon, or they'll fuck it up with like they did with Nolan, and they'll pay a bunch of money for somebody to take him off their hands. Like, there's no reason for me to be excited about Zach Veen, the Rocky, because we know how the story ends. If we're really, really lucky, they might make a wild card and get smoked by the Brewers or something. It just doesn't. None of it feels good. We could each take an aspect of the organization. All right, you get the owner. All right, you get the GM.
Right.
All right, you get their draft guy. Whatever aspect you try and pick that doesn't involve Coors Field is a great place to catch a baseball game. It's bad. There's not one single thing. And if there's somebody out there doing it, they're blowing smoke up your ass right now. It just doesn't feel good. I wish I felt differently. I wish that it just wasn't that way.
Yeah.
But this is the world that they live in. They don't deserve any benefit of the doubt whatsoever. They can't even get the most basic of shit down, which is, hey, when you have an old guy on an expiring contract and you're not making the postseason, at the trade deadline, you trade that guy for a couple of whatever prospects that you guys like, and you move on. And
Yeah.
at this point, even if they did that, those prospects wouldn't become anything. They'd be bums.
Yeah.
Because they're probably not out there scouting other teams, because they don't spend money on infrastructure. They don't do anything that should be done at an MLB level. They're a fucking joke of a franchise.
It's the lack of a roadmap. It's the question you asked Yaya 2 segments ago. It's just like,
I don't even think that's it. I think they have a roadmap. I just think that it doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah, it's all about real estate development.
It's a straight up
to the middle. Yeah.
It's a landing strip. It's where teams park the airplane. It's where other teams swoop in and pick dudes up and then they fly away and then they go on to have great careers and do other things and whatever. They're nothing right now. Like I don't feel like they lack a plan because they think that their plan is working. They're however many games below 500 right now, and they think that they're competing for the postseason. They were the only team at the deadline to do nothing. Nothing. Every single aspect of the organization right now does something that is indefensible. And I don't know how to get deeper beyond that because that it's just the reality of it. It's in every aspect of the organization does something indefensible. I can't even feel good about the Chris Bryant signing because he's hurt all the goddamn time.
Yeah. Yeah, you were talking about the Dodgers. Dodgers straight up mocking us as Tyler Anderson as a 12-1 record and a 2.89 ERA, talking about developing talent and being able to maximize resources. And I think this trade deadline felt especially raw because they just went through a trade deadline where they didn't deal John Gray, they didn't deal Trevor Story, and they lost him for nothing in the offseason. And this is just going to continue. And
the article gets written that the Rockies are mad that John Gray, they thought they had an agreement with John Gray, and John Gray's agent took that agreement and shopped around the MLB for a better deal, got one, and they took it. And it was like, you're mad at the guy's agent for literally doing his job.
Yeah.
What the fuck are we doing here?
Yeah.
That's bad.
Again, it's just like you said, it's so I was gonna sit here and try to be like, well, it's just kind of this, but like it's like to your point, AJ, like it's so many things on so many levels. Like you can't even say it's poor asset management, it's poor this, it's poor that. Other than how you started that whole thing off, other than the ballpark and now kind of the extension to the ballpark, I see. I can't think of one thing where you were like, "Wow, nice move." To your point, even and why is his name escaping me? You just said the big free agent Bryant. You know, even when they signed him, yeah, there was a couple people I saw out there on Twitter like, "This is awesome," but most everyone had the same reaction of like, "Okay, why?"
I loved the signing. I still love the signing because I love that. Hey. I love that whether or not, however I feel about their incompetence or whatever, going out and being like, we're going to give huge money to this guy because we think he can help us win ball games. Great. At least I can understand you guys are trying to win ball games. Yeah. But when you do nothing at the trade deadline, I don't feel like that anymore. For the second straight year, you don't do anything. You patch holes with these veterans who would not be guys like Jose Iglesias, who would not be in the MLB were it not for the Rockies being the last game in town. Like the Rockies are the get the guys who are on their way out of the bigs, and the Rockies are like, we need guys. And like I love the Bryant signing. I love the player. I've loved watching him his whole career. They overpaid for him. They outbid against themselves. The market wasn't there for him to that level, and he basically had to take the money because they were offering almost $200 million, and nobody else was coming close to that.
Does that not feel like an empty calorie move, though? Like,
yeah, they all feel that way.
Win ball games, but like, are they though?
They re-signed a closer at the deadline. He's 37 years old. What do you need a closer for? You're never winning games. You're trailing more games than you're not. Yeah. What are you doing spending money on a closer who's at the tail end of his career? I understand he didn't pitch for 6 years, so the normal wear and tear isn't on his body. So we may see an abnormal decline with his arm. We may see it. Why do you want to be the team that pays for that, though?
Right.
That's the final move you make, though, right,
yeah,
AJ? It's not like move two in like a deep rebuild. Like, it makes no sense. It's almost like this franchise is operating to just stay competitive enough to where people will still come through the doors.
No,
but there's no
even if they bottom out, it won't matter.
You.
Even if they bottom out, it won't matter. People are still going. Because every year they have a great September and they finish 7 games back and they go, hey, look, if we have a better 19 days where we totally fucking fell apart, where they always do it, and you're just like,
see, and but that's where I agree with Dre.
Edmonton Oiler fan, if things were different, you would be living in a different world.
Yeah. But no, like that's where I agree with you, Dre, where it's like it really does. It feels like they keep the team just competitive enough that you can sell the dream, the future, and then they invest so much in the facilities that everyone every year we laugh every year. It's like Groundhog's Day, the start of the Rockies season. It gets off to a good start. People get excited. People go to the ballpark, and then the wheels always come off. But now everyone's like, well, it's just so fun. We went for a couple games at the beginning of the season when they were good and whatever. And so I'm with you. I really do. I think that's their roadmap. How can we be it's just a circle. How can we stay just good enough so that people keep coming in because they're always top 10 in MLB attendance? How can we stay just good enough that people keep coming in the door? We don't really have to commit hard to anything. And it's you feel so bad for the folks that we try to talk to at DNVR, the diehards, that they just want to see a competitive baseball team. And it feels like at times that franchise has no interest in that.
I mean, not even competitive. I just like someone who's building towards something that can resemble a competitive ball club.
Well, and the lack of transparency.
Yeah.
That the lack of transparency about what's going on is another huge issue, because you could understand, okay, hey, we're going to trade these guys. We're not going to trade these. This is kind of the plan here. This is what we're hoping to do. This is what these are our goals here. And instead, every goddamn press conference is them being defensive about things because they've done something indefensible, and them being like, we were the only team to sign a club player to an extension at the trade deadline. We were the only one not to make a trade, but why are we focusing on that? Not the fact that we were the only one to give an extension. Shut the fuck up. Stop feeding us this bullshit, okay? It's offensive.
Yeah.
You treat us all like we're stupid, that you're the smartest guy in the room, and your organization is perpetually 15 games below 500. Shut the fuck up.
Yeah. I mean, it insults your intelligence, and they've turned off the diehards more than anything. Yeah. Because if you actually understand team construction and, drafting and developing and how long-term contenders are built and how you can, build up rosters on the margins, the book was literally written about the Tampa Bay Rays and the 2%. You're not seeing, this is the anti 2%. They just don't get it. So
that's another interesting one, Jared. I hadn't really thought about that. Like with the other teams that we've talked about on the show, it almost feels like kind of the opposite, right? Like the diehards are the ones who, really feel catered to. They understand the moves, they see what's going on, and it's the casuals who, if the Broncos lose a game, the Avs lose a game, they can kind of go haywire. Here, it's kind of the opposite. It's more of like the casuals feel like, oh, yeah, no, this is fun. It's fun to watch. This is good stuff. Then the diehards are like, no, this is miserable. They've completely turned us off. The Rockies ownership group, it feels like the franchise, like you said, just kind of caters to the casuals who they understand aren't going to look real deep into these moves that we make, these decisions that we make. They're going to come out to the ballpark and have a good time. The diehards who understand the game and the way, we evaluate these prospects and stuff and whatever. And it's just, it's so interesting to watch the way that they are run versus the way the other big teams in town are running. It's puzzling more than anything else, I think, for me.
I've moved beyond being puzzled and being offended, because every time they try and talk to us, they get defensive and they try and play the we know more than you angle.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, if you know more than us, then how are you so fucking bad at what you're doing?
Mm-hmm.
And why are you run like no other Major League Baseball team is run?
Right.
Including the successful ones. Why are you not following a trend that other professional teams are following? They're insulting our intelligence.
Yeah.
It really is. It's offensive, man.
Simple. Yeah, it is.
Like 29 other big league teams look at the Rockies and go, "Get a load of this guy."
Yeah.
Well, they are the Rockies are to the MLB what the Capitals goaltending is to the Avs. You just wait around till they move on somewhere else. I'm going to ask you guys this last question, and we're going to get out of here because we do actually have the Denver Avalanche podcast coming up. One last real quick question on the Rockies. How or is there a way to fix this?
You give me $1 billion. You give me and Andre the keys to the. You give us the keys to the kingdom. We'll fix the Rockies.
Yeah,
I have full confidence that we could fix the Rockies. That we could do it. Obviously, we wouldn't be making baseball decisions, but I think that we could. I think that we could successfully make enough smart sports level decisions, based on lessons that we've learned from our respective sports. That we could build an infrastructure and we could invest in the right places and we could build an attitude and we could have a media approach that makes sense and is more transparent and is more fan friendly. And that's it though. Is there a way to fix it? Is there a way to fix it with the Munfords in charge? The answer is no.
It's the teardown analogy AJ started this with. There is no, and I mean, there's no worse thing in sports than knowing the decision maker at the top is not making decisions based on the long-term benefits of your franchise, but more short-sighted, trying to save face, trying to save revenue in the immediate to get where they're going. Yeah.
It's upsetting. It's daunting when you step back and say, you're not a couple tweaks away. You are literally, and it's not like sell off, your player assets and rebuild that way. I mean, you're talking about a top to bottom organizational complete remodel. Honestly, guys, I really enjoyed this conversation. It brought to light some stuff that I hadn't really thought about. And again, you do sometimes have to take a step back and focus on the negative to get to the ultimate positive. I'm sure we'll have more stuff in this realm here as we still have a couple weeks to kill before football gets going at the college and pro level, and then Nuggets and Avs come a little bit after that. Dre, AJ, appreciate you guys taking the time this morning to jump on with me here. Yahir, if you're listening, if you're not putting together 5 other shows simultaneously, as always, thank you, and thank you especially today. I know you're running around like crazy, so big shout out to Yahya. Make sure everyone listening head over to Twitter and give him drop Yahir a heart of thanks because he's making sure that everyone can be seen and heard and look good today. For Andre, AJ, and Yahir, I'm Jesse Montano. Thank you guys all so much for listening to the Denver Sports Podcast, brought to you by Breckenridge Brewery.